I was not looking for anything when she moved in across the hall. That was the point of my life back then. Keep the rent paid, keep my head down, open the tech store at 9, close when they told me, fix cracked screens and dead charging ports for extra cash at my kitchen table. Sleep, repeat. My apartment in Austin was clean in a way that said one person lived there and did not expect company. Gray couch, small TV, 2 bar stools, toolkit under the counter, coffee maker that had probably saved my life more than once. Nothing fancy, nothing embarrassing either. Just controlled, reliable, safe. I was 24, but most people guessed older. Not because I looked old. Just because I moved like somebody who had already figured out that no one was coming to rescue him. She moved in on a Thursday. I noticed her because everybody noticed her, but not in some loud way. She did not stomp into the building like she needed to be seen. She was just there all at once, carrying a plant in one arm and directing 2 movers without raising her voice. Tall, put together, expensive looking without trying too hard. Not flashy. Controlled, same as me, only on her it looked effortless. On me it looked necessary. The first time we actually spoke, she was standing in the hallway with a box cutter in one hand and a half-open package at her feet. "Do you have scissors?" she asked. I held up my keys. "I've got better than scissors." That got a real smile out of her. Her name was Marina. She was 36. Worked from home. Something to do with wellness brands, creative strategy, launch campaigns. The kind of job I understood only in pieces. Over the next week or 2, we built that weird neighbor rhythm where you start recognizing each other's timing before you know much else. Me leaving with coffee at 8:20. Her opening the door around 10 in workout clothes that looked too clean to actually work out in. Small talk by the elevator. Me helping her carry in a side table she bought from a place on South Lamar. Her knocking once to ask if I knew why her kitchen lights flickered. I fixed it in under 10 minutes. "You do this for a living too?" she asked. "Retail by day. Repair stuff whenever people break it." She leaned against the counter and watched me screw the plate back on. "That sounds more useful than whatever I do." The thing about her was she always sounded calm, but not empty, like she was measuring what she gave people. That should have made her harder to read. Instead, it made me pay more attention. The night everything shifted. She knocked close to 10 holding a charger brick and looking annoyed. "Tell me you have one of these," she said. "Mine is in a box that has disappeared into another box." I laughed and let her in. "You packed your own nightmare." She stepped inside, glanced around like she had not really seen the place before, and said, "This is exactly what I thought your apartment would look like." "Which means what?" "Like you don't waste time." I found the charger in my junk drawer. She stayed a minute longer than she had to, sitting on the edge of the couch while I plugged in her phone to make sure the cable worked. We talked about food trucks parked down the block on weekends, about how her internet kept dropping, about whether Austin was still worth living in now that everyone complained about Austin all day. It was easy. Easy enough that, when she stood to leave, neither of us rushed it. Then her phone buzzed on the cushion after the door closed behind her. I picked it up to take it to her, and the screen lit in my hand. I should have looked away faster. I know that, but I saw it. It was a photo of her. Not cheap, not posed for attention, nothing like that. She was standing in front of what looked like a mirror, wearing a black tank and loose jeans. One strap slipped off her shoulder. No big smile, no performance. Just this quiet, direct look at herself like she was checking whether she was still there. It hit me harder than it should have. Not because it was revealing, because it felt private in a way that had nothing to do with skin. My heart was still beating too fast when she knocked again. Less than a minute later, I opened the door. She looked past me immediately. "I left my phone." "Yeah," I said, holding it up. She took it, but she did not move. Her eyes lifted to mine. "Did you open it?" There were 100 smoother ways to handle that. I could have said no, could have acted confused, could have made it easier for both of us. Instead I said, "It lit up when I picked it up. I saw the photo." She went very still. "I wasn't trying to," I added, "but I saw it." For a second I thought I had killed whatever strange trust had been building between us. Then she let out one breath and looked down at the phone in her hand. "Most men would have lied," she said. "Yeah," I said. "Probably." She gave a small nod, still not looking at me. Do you want to know why I took it? I should have said no. I should have let her keep that to herself. But the whole hallway felt charged now, too honest to pretend. Yeah, I said quietly. She looked up. I took it on a day I felt like I had disappeared. Not from the world. From myself. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Work, boxes, routines, all of it. I just needed proof that I was still visible. That I was still a woman and not just somebody managing her life. Nothing in me had a clever answer for that. So I told the truth again. You are. Something changed in her face then. Not softer exactly. More open. Like a door had unlocked somewhere behind her eyes. She studied me for another second, then said, I'm making dinner tomorrow. Nothing impressive. You can come over and save me from eating pasta alone. I tried to answer like my pulse was normal. Yeah, okay. She stepped back toward her door, then paused. 7 works. After she went inside, I stood in my hallway longer than I want to admit, staring at her closed door like it had just said my name. Nothing had happened. Not technically. No line crossed, no big move, no dramatic scene. But I knew it anyway. Something had opened. And for the first time in a long while, going back into my own apartment felt like walking into a life that had suddenly gotten too small. Dinner at her place should not have felt like a big deal. It was pasta, a bottle of mineral water, candles she claimed were only lit because one of her lamps still refused to work right. But the second I stepped into her apartment at 7, I knew this was not neighbor small talk anymore. Her place smelled like garlic and clean laundry. Boxes were mostly gone by then. She had actual art on the walls already, heavy books stacked on the floor by the couch, and one long shelf with ceramics that looked too specific to be random. Felt lived in a way mine didn't. Mine was functional. Hers had a pulse. You look nervous, she said, setting down 2 bowls. I'm trying not to knock over something expensive. She laughed. That is not why you look nervous. I sat across from her at the table and tried not to stare too much. She wore a plain white t-shirt and loose black pants, hair up, no extra effort I could see, and somehow that made her harder to look away from than if she dressed for it. Dinner started easy. Work stories. Austin traffic. A woman at my store who had screamed because her phone case was the wrong shade of blue. A client of hers who wanted a full rebrand but kept using words like soft power and sacred visibility without explaining what any of it meant. She did impressions that were so dry they killed me. You're funny, I said. She tipped her head. You sound surprised. I think I expected you to be... I stopped. Older? She asked. More serious. That was a smart correction. I smiled, but I felt the heat hit my face anyway. She noticed. Of course she noticed. After dinner I fixed the lamp in under 5 minutes. Bad socket. She stood beside me holding a screwdriver and looking amused. I really hate how attractive competence is, she said. I looked up at her. That sounds dangerous. It is, she said, and for a second neither of us moved. Things could have turned right there, but her door buzzer went off. She frowned, checked her phone, then rolled her eyes. My package is downstairs. They left it in the lobby again. I'll come with you. It's 1 box. Yeah, and this building has the security level of a bus stop. That made her grin. We rode the elevator down, but when we got to the mail area, her package was gone. Fresh delivery photo, wrong kind of proof, nothing there. You have got to be kidding me, she said. The driver's picture showed it by the front desk maybe 15 minutes earlier. I asked the guy working nights if he'd seen anyone take it. He shrugged, then pointed toward the side exit and said some kid in a black hoodie had come through fast. So instead of ending the night politely, we were outside in the warm dark walking around the block behind the building, checking by the dumpster area and the side alley like 2 idiots on a low-budget mission. She was annoyed. I was more invested than I should have been, and somehow that made it fun. We found the box ripped open behind a hedge by the parking gate. Whoever took it had left the contents, which turned out to be expensive-looking sample jars for some launch event she was helping with. She crouched to gather them and said, "This is such a stupid city." I crouched beside her. "No, this is a very committed city. Commits fully to inconvenience." She laughed so hard she had to stop picking things up. That should have been the end of it, but once we were already out, neither of us wanted to go back upstairs. A food truck lot 3 streets over was still open, so we walked there carrying her half-destroyed box. We got tacos, then kept talking in the plastic chairs under string lights while people drifted around us. That was the first time things got real. Not heavy, just real. She asked why I never talked about family unless somebody dragged it out of me. I told her because most of my life had been about handling what was in front of me, and once you get good at that, you stop building much beyond the next month. She listened in that focused way she had, elbows on the table, eyes steady. Then she said, "You live like someone who learned early that hope is expensive." I looked at her for a second. That's a rough thing to hear from somebody eating tacos across from you. It can still be true. So I asked about her move. Not the polished version. The real one. She didn't give me every detail, but enough. Enough to understand there had been a man before Austin. A man who made everything sound reasonable while slowly making her doubt her own read on reality. Not screaming, not drama every day. Just years of little corrections until she barely trusted her own center anymore. And now? I asked. And now I work, organize drawers, buy candles, pretend that counts as a new life. The wind pushed a strand of hair across her cheek. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked it back. My hand dropped immediately after, but it was too late. We both felt it. Her eyes stayed on mine. "You know this is a bad idea." "Which part?" She gave the smallest smile. "You." That landed harder than I wanted it to. "Because I'm across the hall? Because you're 24. There it was. Not cruel. Not dismissive. Just true, sitting between us. I leaned back in the chair. And here I thought it was my sparkling retail future. She looked down, then back up. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make yourself smaller before somebody else can." For a minute neither of us said anything. Music was playing from somewhere behind the trucks. Glass bottles clinked. A couple at the next table argued quietly about where to go next. Then she said softer, "You're not the problem. That's what makes it worse." We walked back late, slower than we had before. At the elevator, she said goodnight like she meant to leave it there. Then the power in the building flickered, cut out, came back, and the elevator froze on another floor with a hard mechanical groan. She looked at the stairwell door. Perfect. So we climbed 11 floors in the half-lit stairwell, laughing by the 4th landing, breathing hard by the 8th. By the 10th, she had kicked off her heels and was carrying them in one hand. When we reached our floor, she stopped in the hallway, chest rising fast, hair falling loose now. "This," she said, "is not helping your case. My case. The one where I keep trying to remember you're younger than me." I stepped closer before I could overthink it. "And how's that going?" Her mouth parted like she was about to answer, but instead she just looked at me. Really looked. Then she said, almost under her breath, "Not great." I kissed her before caution could get back in the room. She kissed me back instantly, one hand catching my shirt like she needed something to hold. It was not polite, not accidental, not a test. It had been building for days, maybe longer, and the second it happened I knew there was no clean way backward from it. When we finally pulled apart, she stayed close enough that I could still feel her breath. "This is still a bad idea," she said. "Yeah," I said, but neither of us moved toward our own door. The next morning was awkward in exactly the way you'd expect and also not at all. I opened my door for work and she opened hers at almost the same second. For half a second we just stood there in the hallway like two people who had accidentally read each other's private messages out loud. Then she gave me a small look, somewhere between amused and careful. "Morning," she said. "Morning." She had her laptop bag over one shoulder and a coffee in hand. Hair tied back, face calm, like the woman from the food truck lot, and the stairwell had been packed away overnight. But when the elevator came and we stepped inside, her arm brushed mine and neither of us moved away. At the lobby she said, "I have a thing tonight. Don't interpret silence as regret." That stayed with me all day. Not because I thought she regretted it, because that sentence told me she knew I might. She knew I was already halfway to pulling back just to avoid being the younger guy who got carried away. That night turned into the first of several weird, uneven days. She got busier. A brand launch, client dinners, some event on the east side. I worked, came home, fixed a guy's gaming console at my kitchen counter, tried not to stare every time my phone lit up. Then around 10:30 she finally texted. Need a favor. Downstairs? I was in the elevator 30 seconds later. She was in the garage beside her car. One hand on the steering wheel, heels off, expression tight. Battery's dead, she said. And I've had a terrible evening. I pulled my jumper pack from my trunk. Good news. I only know how to solve one of those problems. That got the ghost of a smile out of her. While the battery charged, she leaned against the wall and told me about the event. It was some gallery brand wellness mashup that sounded exhausting just hearing about it. She had spent 2 hours being bright and polished around people who all wanted something. Then she checked her phone in the bathroom and found 3 messages from her ex. Not angry, not dramatic. Worse, casual. Just enough to slide under the skin. In town next week. We should talk. Need to settle a few things. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I read them and felt something in me lock up. What things? I asked. She crossed her arms. That's his favorite move. Vague pressure. Make me ask what he means, then act like I'm the one escalating. Are you going to meet him? I don't know. I hated how fast she said it. Not because it meant she wanted to see him, because it meant he still knew how to make her uncertain. Her car started. She should have left after that, but neither of us wanted to end it in a parking garage with his name hanging between us. So we drove out for late coffee, then ended up crossing half the city because one place was closed and another was too loud. It turned into one of those Austin nights that feels stitched together by bad decisions and perfect timing. Gas station coffee first, then a taco place with 3 stools open, then a long drive with the windows cracked because neither of us felt like going home. That was when she told me the practical reason he might actually show up. There was still shared money tied up in a small consulting project they had funded together before the breakup. Not huge money, just enough to give him an excuse to stay in contact. Enough to act reasonable while keeping a hand on the door. He never needed to raise his voice, she said, looking out through the windshield. That was the problem. He could make me feel wrong in a completely calm tone. I kept both hands on the wheel. Then don't meet him alone. She turned toward me. You really think I need a babysitter? No, I said. I think he's used to catching you by yourself. She was quiet after that. Not offended. Just thinking. A few days later, she invited me to a Saturday market outside the city. I need to source a few things, she said. You can judge overpriced ceramics and pretend you hate it. I went, obviously. The drive out was easy. Music low, coffee in the cup holders. Her bare foot tucked under one leg in the passenger seat like she'd known me longer than she had. For a while it felt simple. We walked the market, made fun of terrible branding, ate barbecue too early in the day, and she kept touching my arm when she laughed like she forgot she was doing it. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen and her whole face changed. She declined it. A minute later he called again. Take it, I said. She did, but only after stepping a few feet away. I could not hear his voice, only hers getting flatter and flatter. No, that's not what I said. I'm not doing this here. You don't get to decide that. Stop. When she came back, she was different. Smaller somehow, even though she was standing straight. He's in Austin already, she said. Apparently the meeting I thought was next week is Monday morning now. I nodded, waiting. Then she said the thing I had been scared of hearing since the stairwell. This is exactly why I shouldn't have started anything with you. Started anything. Not us. Not this. Anything. I looked at her for a second longer than I should have. Right? She saw it land and tried to fix it. That's not what I meant. It's close enough. The drive back was rough. Not yelling, not dramatic, just wrong. Every answer a little too short. Every silence too loud. By the time we got back to the building, I felt stupid for how quickly I had let her matter. So I did what I always do when things start getting too big. I narrowed my life again. I worked extra hours. Said yes to a management track conversation at the store I had been avoiding for months. Took in more side repairs. Ate at my counter. Kept my door closed. Across the hall, her routine changed too. More calls. More quiet. Once, late, I heard her pacing inside her apartment. Then on Monday night, I came home and found him in our hallway. He was exactly the kind of man I had pictured. Well-dressed, composed, not trying too hard because men like that never have to. He was standing by her door with one hand in his pocket like he belonged there. Marina was inside the doorway, shoulders tense, voice low. Then she saw me. Something passed across her face so fast I almost missed it. Relief. Her ex turned and looked me over once. Not threatened. Evaluating. Neighbor? He asked. I leaned against my door and said, "That depends. You leaving?" He smiled like I had confirmed something for him. Marina stepped out into the hall then, fully, and shut her apartment door behind her. "You need to go," she told him. He looked at her, not me. "You're proving my point." "No," she said, steadier now. "I'm finally hearing yours clearly." For the first time since I'd seen him, his expression slipped. He said her name like a warning. She did not shrink. "Go." He held her gaze for one more second, then walked past me toward the elevator like the hallway itself offended him. I waited until the doors closed. When I turned back, Marina was still standing there, breathing hard. I should have gone inside, protected my pride, made her knock first. Instead, I crossed the hallway. She looked up at me and said, almost like it hurt, "I was wrong." I stopped in front of her. "About what?" "About calling this a bad time and acting like that meant it wasn't real. That was the moment everything could still either come back together or fall apart for good." I looked at her for a second and did not make it easy for her. Maybe that was pride. Maybe I needed to hear her say it plainly. She must have seen that, because she took one step closer and said, "I keep trying to manage this before it can hurt me. That's what I've been doing with everything since I got here. Work, routine, people. You too." The hallway was quiet except for the hum of the vent above us. "And," I asked, "and I'm tired of acting like caution is the same thing as wisdom." That hit me harder than anything dramatic could have. Because I knew exactly what she meant. I had built my whole life around the same idea. Keep things small enough and nothing can really wreck you. Keep your wants narrow. Keep your future cheap. Keep your heart busy with practical things. I said, "You don't get to pull me close and then call me a mistake every time your past shows up." She nodded immediately. "I know." That took some of the fight out of me. She unlocked her door. "Come inside." Her apartment looked the same as always, but the air felt different. Tenser, cleaner somehow, like something had finally broken all the way instead of cracking a little at a time. She went straight to the kitchen, poured water, drank half the glass, then turned and looked at me like she had decided not to hide anymore. "He wanted to keep the project account open," she said. "Said it would be easier for taxes, reimbursements, whatever else he could think of. I closed it this afternoon. Sent the final transfer. Sent the receipts. Then I told him not to contact me unless it was through email and only if there was something legally necessary." I leaned against the counter. "And the hallway visit?" He said he was nearby. Wanted to talk in person. Wanted closure. She gave a short laugh with no humor in it. Men like him always want closure once they feel the door actually shutting. And now he doesn't get to decide my emotional weather anymore. The way she said it made me believe her. I took a breath. "Good." She studied me. "That's all you have?" "No." I looked down at my hands, then back at her. "But the rest is mine." She waited. I told her about the store first. The management offer I had been circling for weeks. More pay, more hours, more responsibility, and a future I could already picture too clearly. Me in a polo with keys on my belt, solving staffing problems under fluorescent lights, calling it stability because it came with insurance and a title. Not a bad life. Just not one I wanted enough to spend years in by accident. Then I told her about Luis, a friend from my repair network, who had been trying to talk me into opening a small shop with him. Phone repair, refurbishing, custom builds, data recovery, house calls for people who didn't know how to set up half the things they bought. Real work. Ours if I had the nerve. "Why haven't you done it?" she asked. I laughed once. Because wanting bigger things feels reckless when you spent half your life just trying to stay upright. Her face softened. "There you are." "Where?" The actual problem. I smiled a little. Thanks. She stepped closer. You're not scared of failing. You're scared of building a life you care about enough to lose. I hated how accurate that was. For a minute neither of us said anything. Then I reached for her and she came to me without hesitation. One hand sliding up my chest, the other around my neck, like all the holding back had finally run out of room. Kissing her that time felt different from the stairwell. Less like crossing a line, more like arriving at one. After that, things did not become magically simple. That would have felt fake. But they became honest. She blocked his number the next morning. I turned down the management track 2 days later. That same week, she took me to one of her events again. But this time I did not feel like some kid hovering at the edge of her world. It was a rooftop launch downtown, warm air, city lights, people in expensive shoes talking about audience alignment and storytelling like they had invented both. The first time I had seen her in that kind of space, I'd mostly been struck by how naturally she fit there. This time I noticed something else. She kept looking for me, not because she needed rescuing, because she wanted me there. At one point a guy with perfect teeth asked how we knew each other, and before I could say a word, she said, "He's with me." Simple sentence. Huge effect. Later, after most people had left, we stood by the railing with the city spread out below us. Red lights and traffic and those glass towers Austin keeps building like it's trying to convince itself it's somewhere else. She said, "Do you know what scared me most?" "What?" "That you felt good too fast." She looked at me, steady and open. "Not because you were younger, because you felt real before I had a system for it." I let that sit a second. "You know what scared me?" She waited. That one day things would get complicated in your adult life and I'd turn into the sweet guy across the hall you almost picked. Her mouth tightened. "You really thought that?" "Yeah." She moved in front of me then, close enough that I had to look down a little. "Listen to me carefully. The age difference is real. I see it. I felt it from the start. Not because you're lacking something, but because I know how people reduce things like this into a joke or a phase or some easy label." Her hand settled against my chest. "But none of that changes what I know when I'm with you." "And what's that?" "That I don't feel smaller." There was nothing smart to say after that. So I kissed her again under a skyline I used to think belonged to other people. A month later, my apartment looked different. Not because I moved out. Not yet. But because it stopped looking like a holding room. The toolkit had become inventory. The kitchen table had invoices on it. Luis and I were hunting for a small lease on a narrow storefront that used to be a print shop. I was tired all the time and more alive than I'd been in years. Marina changed too, in ways that were quieter until you noticed they were everywhere. She stopped taking every client that paid well and started shaping her own consulting work around brands she actually respected. She cut off the polished, drained version of herself at the source. Less performing, more choosing. And us, we stopped hovering around the idea of each other and built a real rhythm. Some nights were at her place, some at mine. Grocery runs. Coffee on Sunday mornings. Me replacing a broken outlet while she stood at the counter reading me a sentence from some ridiculous client email just to watch me laugh. Her editing the copy on my first business flyer because, according to her, I had the branding instincts of a smart raccoon. One Saturday, we drove west out of Austin before sunrise. No event, no crisis, no excuse, just a cooler in the back, towels, gas station coffee, and a river spot she said used to be her favorite place to clear her head. The roads were empty, the sky slowly opening up, and her hand stayed on my thigh half the drive like it had belonged there longer than either of us wanted to admit. At a stoplight in a small town outside the city, she turned the music down and said, "You realize this is what I wanted, right? What, river water and bad coffee?" She smiled. "No. Forward." That stayed with me the rest of the day. By late afternoon we were driving back sun-warm and tired, her hair a mess from the water, my shoulders burned a little, both of us smelling like summer and sunscreen and the kind of day people usually waste because they think they'll have time later. When we pulled into our building garage, neither of us rushed to get out. She looked at me and said, "I'm done living like my real life starts after I recover from it. Are you actually living, or just recovering from your week? I need to hear your thoughts in the comments." I nodded. "Good." Then she asked, "Are you?" And for once the answer came easy. Yeah, I said. I think I am. That night we carried groceries upstairs together, bumping shoulders in the hallway, arguing about whether we had enough limes for tacos. She unlocked her door, then mine, like the choice of where we ate barely mattered now. Everything ordinary about that moment felt bigger than all the dramatic ones that came before it. Because this was the part one had never really trusted. Not the rush, not the danger, not the wanting, the part after. The part where two people stop waiting for life to restart and realize it already has.